She hunts the truth for a living, but the hardest truth she ever had to face was becoming a victim in her own home. Today, survivor and PI Loren Vellucci joins us. I am so thrilled to welcome licensed private investigator Loren Vellucci. Based between Pensacola and Atlanta, Loren is a respected legal analyst who has appeared on court TV. We have even got to share the screen a few times and contributed her investigative expertise to high profile cases. Beyond her professional work, Loren is a survivor of domestic abuse. She'll be sharing her personal journey through the darkness of that experience, the paths she took to heal, and how she's now channeling that strength to help and support others moving forward. Loren, welcome to Strong Enough. How are
Hi,
you?
Claudia. Good. It's so good to be with you and see you again.
You as well. We connected, I think immediately. Maybe that
Uh-huh.
was just me. I don't
Nope.
know. Um,
We definitely
but
did.
I just felt like we were kindred spirits. And then when we started to get to know each other better, we learned that we are kindred spirits in a lot of ways. And we have a
Mhm.
lot of similarities in our past and where we are today, even, I
Yeah.
would say. So, talk about being a PI because I have to tell you, um, it's something that I would love to do. Everybody thinks being a police officer is super cool, and it was, but like, there's just something about a PI and a lady PI that I
Yes.
think is amazing. So, how did you get into this? Talk a little bit about your journey here.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I grew up watching Matlock and reading Nancy Drew. So I was always interested in that kind of thing. But I had a neighbor and his wife who were licensed PIs. And when I found that out, I was like, oh, no way. Like, I've always been interested in that kind of stuff. And so they're like, well, you should just do it. And I'm like, I have a full-time job. Like, when would I even do that? And they're like, well, they have, weekend courses that you can take at the academy and get your license. And so he's like, I'm sure I could get you a deal. And I'm like, I don't know. Let me think about it. So I thought about it and I asked for more information, ended up going up to the academy and signed up a few weeks later and just did it on the weekends until I passed, the state board. And so here I am.
So I did not know there was an academy. So that's amazing. I think when a lot of people think about PIs, maybe they think of people like Dog the Bounty Hunter. Not that there's anything wrong with
Yeah.
him, but there's not a lot of rules and regs going on. When you
Right.
look at
Yeah.
people like that. So it's completely different for you, though, right? Like you've got rules and laws and things you have to follow. Correct?
Yes, and they're per state. So a lot of states you don't have to go to an academy or you don't have to do a whole lot. Georgia and Florida are the strictest on the licensing. So for me, the academy was a good option. There's other ways to do it. Like I think you have to be kind of under someone for 2 years, but working full time. And I'm like, I have to make money. I can't do that. But yes, you have to learn all the laws and know what is okay to do, like as far as looking at trash on the street, going through trash. You have to know the different laws because it's not the same everywhere. So, yes, there's definitely some regulations there.
The old trash pull, right?
Yes,
And
yes, it's a good one.
and it is, and that is why. And I'm not going to give all the secrets, but I will say we don't put our trash out until it's ready to be picked up, and there are reasons
That's
for
right.
that.
Yep.
So I'm just saying, maybe when you put your trash out, you're allowing other people to have the right to go through it.
Yep.
Maybe,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
perhaps. Do you find as a woman, if you're dealing with people, so not, far away with the wide angle lens, or picking out the trash, but when you're actually talking to people, do you think it's easier because you're a woman?
I do. And that was something that I learned right away is that because there aren't as many women in this field, you also get the benefit of looking more inconspicuous. When people think of a PI, they don't necessarily go to a woman right away. So when you're, in a store, in a bar, in any kind of location, they're less likely to be like alerted to possible, anything. So I definitely play that to my advantage for sure.
As you should. And I
Yes.
think it is a lot of ex-cops that
Yes.
go into PI work, a lot of male ex-cops, and they have a look, let's be honest. And
Right.
so they're much easier to kind of pick out of the crowd or at least be suspicious of, whereas you are just a pretty lady sauntering up to the bar to order a cocktail.
That's right. Absolutely. And yeah, you'd be surprised the amount of cocktails that people will purchase for you. So like they want to engage and you actually get into a conversation a lot easier with being a woman in my opinion. So,
I love it.
yeah.
Well, let's talk about maybe the not so fun part of your life. So,
Yeah.
as I said, one of the things that we share is our stamp as a survivor of domestic abuse, and I want to talk about red flags because I think a lot of us blame ourselves, and we feel like, what did I miss? What should I have seen? And it's easier now to look back. Like I could give you a list of like 27 things probably that
Yeah.
I was like, well, I should have paid. Like literally on our very first date, he ordered a bottle of wine. Sounds nice, right?
Uh-huh.
Except he didn't ask me. He didn't say, what
Mm.
kind of wine do you like? Do you want a glass of wine? He didn't ask me anything. He just said, we're going to have a bottle of whatever, whatever. And at the time, I was like, well, this is amazing.
Right.
And then much later, I was like, oh, like that's actually control. That is
Right.
him seeing what I'm going to do.
Uh-huh.
So, will you talk about some of the red flags, maybe that looking back, you now know existed, but you kind of didn't see at the time?
Yeah, absolutely. So my story started, I got married at 19. So I started dating him at 18. I was in a very religious household, and so was he. Um, and it was a long distance relationship out of state. So I think that was not great at my age to begin with. But there was just things that I was finding out along the way that he wasn't honest about. And once that happened, you're already in a position, especially as a younger person, that you're like, okay, well, he at least owned up to it, and I'm justifying why it wasn't told to me in my head. Also, he didn't have a very good relationship with his mother, but I had a reason why that made sense to me because she wasn't the nicest lady. So in my mind, I'm justifying, that and all of that. But yeah, looking back on it, there should have been red flags right away, and those were the ones right away.
So, let's move a little bit forward in that relationship. And it sounds like you said you started dating when you were 18, you got married when you were 19. So, there wasn't a super long courtship and you were long distance.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about now how you feel about that and maybe what went wrong in that quick process that you weren't even really together.
Yeah. I had no business doing that. You don't even know yourself at that age, and you certainly don't have enough time to get to know the other person. And I fully believe that it was because of the religion, reasons for that. But his parents would not allow him to come up here like but once a month. So talk about literally not knowing that person.
Mhm.
And then when we got engaged, he was allowed to come up like twice a month, and then the engagement wasn't super long, a few months. And so it was way too quick and not enough time of seeing this person day in and day out, how they react to everyday activities, how they react to really, arguments, disagreements, or anything like that. That was never experienced. And then, we were young. We weren't super, super stable in what we were doing for careers. That took a toll and everything kind of at once. And it was just a disaster. And I had no business getting married at that age. I really didn't.
Everything is like princesses and
Uh
castles and
huh.
hearts flying through the air when we're 18, 19, 20, even. And there are very few relationships I feel like that make it.
Yes.
So, when you guys got married and now you are together day in and day out, how quickly was it that you were like, oh, this is bad. This is not good.
So he started working out of town, I would say about 6 months after we got married. And so we were apart a good bit of that week. And so because of that, I think it took a little longer. But he started being very verbally abusive a year in. And to me, even the way I grew up in a religion, it was all rainbows and butterflies. Like that wasn't talked about. So I didn't realize what was going on until it was way into it, that was actual, verbal emotional abuse. I just thought he's mean, like he's bipolar, like, I didn't know. But you didn't know what would set him off, and then he would just go off. So I didn't know what that looked like, and I was experiencing it day in and day out, and having to kind of internalize that because I didn't want to talk bad about him too much to like my friends or family and all of that. So it was um it was the first time I had experienced anything like that.
I believe that emotional abuse can be far more damaging and more difficult to heal from than physical abuse.
I agree.
And I know, people get murdered. Obviously, you can't
Yes.
heal from that.
Yes.
There are things, but for me, it was much more harder, much more difficult to heal from those things that were said to me and the control and
Yes.
all of that. Would you agree with that? And if so, what do you feel like was the most difficult thing for you to heal from?
I 100% agree with that. Because there's always that honeymoon stage a little bit after there's a physical thing, and then they do feel bad about it for the most part, right? So it's only like it's a shorter term in my experience. The verbal stuff can happen over like days, and the physical stuff for me was not something that lasted for days. So I would absolutely agree from that. And plus, it affects your psyche, I think,
Mhm.
in a way that like you don't even realize it because you're like, I don't believe the things that he's saying, but then your brain and all of that, it is believing it, whether
Mhm.
you want it to or not. So I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, so for me, I was such a mess by the time I decided to leave that I had to go to a therapist and basically tell her, in 50 minutes, the whole story and have her tell me I was doing the right thing. And it's because I was so untrusting of my own self after the years of the emotional abuse, the physical abuse, but mostly the emotional, and just no longer being able to believe that my thoughts were valid or that maybe I
Right.
could make the right decision by myself. And it's crazy now to think that, that I literally went to a stranger to give me permission to leave, but that's how I felt.
I feel you on that on so many levels because I did not feel comfortable enough to speak to my family about it until the very end. Well, not even really the
Mm,
very end, but years later down the road. Um, and so at that point, we only would hang out with people in the same religion. So it was a very interesting dynamic to begin with. But I started to kind of look for breaks away from him and made other friends outside of that. And if it was not for those friends and kind of opening up to them, I don't know how I would have gotten through it at the age that I was. And them telling me, no, you need to get out. This is extremely unhealthy. We're concerned for your health, like we're concerned for your safety. So I completely agree. And then when I did open up to my family, it was, well, you got to stay with him because the Bible says so. So unless he commits adultery, like, sorry, and I was like, that's so like it's just not right. Like in
mhm.
in my head, I'm trying to like rationalize what I've grown up with, but yet knowing that I fear for my life, I slept with a knife under the mattress for years, because I would wake up, there would be a pillow over my face. And I didn't know if he just wasn't going to take it off one night. And
Mhm.
so I didn't sleep for the majority of the marriage. I would stay up awake until he was about ready to get up to go to work. And about an hour before he would wake up, I would finally feel comfortable enough to fall asleep. So I literally, I mean, I just didn't sleep for years. And so it's very, it's just tricky. But when you feel like more comfortable talking to strangers and needing
Mhm.
that reassurance from them, like that also should be like a red flag. And because I was told that I was completely deranged and just completely out of my mind and all of these things. And you're like, no, like,
I don't think
what is
so.
happening? Yeah. So yep.
You answered one of my questions kind of about the religion, and you don't have to name the religion, but I was going to ask, if that's one of the things that sort of held you back for a while was being in this religion that I was going to guess made it virtually impossible for
Yeah.
you to walk away. How has that been when you did walk away? Did it affect your relationship with your parents, your family? Did you leave the religion? Like, talk a little bit about how that went for you.
How much time you got, Claudia?
Well, I mean, we can do multiple episodes,
No.
so don't you worry.
That was the thing that was holding me back. So once I realized what was going on, once he was physical for the first time, I knew that was not something that's going to stop. And I checked out. I didn't want anything to do with it. However, I wasn't in a position where I could just move out on my own. Um, my job didn't pay enough to do that. So we were living on both of our salaries and things like that. My family was like, absolutely, like you got to go back. He didn't commit adultery. So I'm just like, this is insane. So that was the only thing that was holding me on at that point. So I lived through many, many years of it. My sister was probably the most hurtful. She didn't believe anything I was saying. My ex was a very good looking guy. And it was just weird, like the way she would, um, defend him and not believe me. It was very odd. That was always like very hurtful. And then I started not going to the church as much. Not completely not going, but just like fell into a very deep depression, very, very bad anxiety. And there were days I did not get up out of bed. And so my sister and her husband pretty much disowned me like right away and were like, you're not going to church, like you can't be around your nieces and nephews who I had pretty much raised,
Mhm.
and were like everything to me. But they would allow my husband to be around them. And so it was just there's a lot there.
Mhm.
And then he eventually got into like calling sex lines and running up thousands of dollars worth of bills. Yeah, that was that.
I'm sure
um
that wasn't in the religious handbook either, but
It wasn't.
continue.
It was not, Claudia, but it was not bad enough to where I could be free of the marriage. So I still had to stay, is what I was told. So it was frustration. Even after that, they were still allowed to hang out with my nieces and nephews. I'm not. So I'm building like a lot of resentment for people like my sister, the religion,
Mhm.
which is something I never wanted. Like, it was God. I've always believed in God and had a relationship with him. So like it was balancing what I knew my entire life,
Mhm.
what I had been raised on by the things that I'm experiencing and wondering if like everything was a lie kind of thing.
Mhm.
So finally, more instances happened where there was physical things. I was told not to call the cops one time because it would look bad on the religion. it was just a lot of it was a lot of things, at a young age. And it was just me. Like, I didn't have a support system other
Mhm.
than the few friends that I was allowed to see sometimes. Now, he did not like that because he
Of
felt that
course.
yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. So he tried everything he could to get that to, stop. But I was strong in being like, nope, sorry. There's a lot going on. I need an outlet to go hang out with people and enjoy doing things that I enjoy. I eventually got the courage up to say, like, we're separating. And during that time, he actually did cheat enough. And so, yeah. So then my family was like, oh, how dare him? And I'm like, oh, sure. And so then I was able to move forward with a divorce. And now, like, my mom specifically feels extremely bad that she did not see it. And that's something that it still blows me away that, like, certain religions, even in this day and time, don't know how many people are affected by domestic violence, and that no matter how much you love God, like, there are still things that happen inside of a church and congregation that are not good and needs to be handled in an appropriate manner, in a safe manner. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
It does, yes. What was the last straw for you? What made you finally say, okay, I get what the religion is telling me. I get what my family's telling me. I get that I'm basically being shunned, but I can't take it anymore.
he did the sex phone call thing again, and I caught him, and I was like, I don't care what anybody says. That is, like, sorry. He's
Yeah.
abusive, and then he's doing this. If you don't feel that that's enough, I don't know what to tell you, because I do. And
Hmm.
so, like, at the very least, I'm, like, separating. And then as soon as that happened, I felt like there would be other things that happened. And sure enough, he started seeing someone that was in our church, and, like, it was crazy. And so that all happened, but I'm thankful for that, because it got me out of the
Right.
situation, the hell that I was living in for,
Hmm.
gosh, almost 10 years.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
yeah. So, yeah.
Wow. How are you today with your family?
um, I will never be close to my sister. I don't go to church, but, like, maybe once a year. I have a relationship with God, and I know he understands and sees
Hmm.
everything, and so I'm comfortable with that. They are not. My sister and my brother also, they're not. So they feel very a certain way about that, so they keep their distance, and that's fine with me. But I miss my nieces and nephews, because they've only heard
Hmm.
one side of the story, which is
Right.
interesting, because they're all married now, and my ex, you know, the guy that abused me for years, he was invited to the wedding. So,
Stop.
uh-huh, yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Wow.
So my mom and dad, they know how he is now, and they're very bothered by the fact that they didn't listen and they didn't see what I was telling them as serious as it was.
Hmm.
Um, uh, Something that eats at my mom every day. So, like, we're very close now, my mom, and myself. But like, I have learned to, I've learned that family is not always blood, right? And so
That's right.
it is people who you choose to be in, your life, in your space, that acts like family, and who will be there for you, and you can be there for them as well. So I learned that very quickly, because I think that was a very, safety mechanism for me.
Hmm.
And fortunately, I had some really good friends to help me through that time. Today I'm great. I can honestly say I would not be the person that I am had I not gone through that.
Hmm.
And for that, I am thankful. So I see the silver lining in it that way. So,
I love that because that's how I feel. I really try to look at everything happens for a reason, and we have to use the crappy things that happen to us and figure out what is the reason. And I think for us, it's so that we have the ability, we're entirely different people that we never would have been, but we're also people now that stand up for other people. We stand up for people
yes.
who don't have a voice, or their
Yes.
voice has been quieted or silenced. And now we step in for people like that. So I think that, that is a blessing for
Yes.
sure. What was the most difficult thing in your healing process? What really and maybe you didn't have any struggles, but if so, was there anything that was just like, wow, this is hard to get over? Like for me, I still say I'm sorry too much. Like I will just be in the kitchen and my husband like walks in the kitchen and I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. And he's like, for standing, like I don't understand. So I still do that and I
Yep.
try to get better. But is there anything you have like that?
Oh yeah, I do the same. And it's funny because when the Gabby Petito video came
Hmm.
out, when they were pulled over and she
Yep.
immediately started apologizing, I was like, whoa,
Yep.
whoa, 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 whoa. So
Yes.
things like that, I do that. I feel like I'm finally able to say no.
Hmm.
I'm a people pleaser
Hmm.
and I don't want to let people down. And it is healthy to say no sometimes. And so
Yes.
I am continually learning that, but I feel like I'm growing in that department. Um, but like just seeing my friends that I grew up with, I guess all be, married and still friends with that person. And that took me a while to get over. And
Hmm.
then I kind of realized, well, they really were not your friends if that's,
Right.
how it was.
Right.
And so then that made me choose my friends more wisely.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, there's things, and then moving forward, if I find that person again, I I want to make sure that I'm not looking over the red flags because I
Hmm.
know obviously I lived with them for so long that I wouldn't want to miss that and mess up again and be with someone who has so it's a constant thing,
Right.
so it's absolutely.
I do want to call out one thing that you mentioned, and that is family.
Yep.
Because in the last episode, so if you're having family issues, please go back and watch the last episode of Strong Enough. Because I also am a firm believer that we do not have to stick around family just because they are blood relatives, that there are family members who can be just as toxic, just as abusive, just as damaging as a stranger that we run into. And so many people do themselves such a disservice by sticking around those people because it's family and I'm
Yes.
supposed to. So I'm so glad that you mentioned that and you have a great story. I mean, it's unfortunate, but I'm so proud that you were able to see that and say, you know what? I'm not going to subject myself to people who aren't Team Loren,
Yeah, and
because that's what it boils down to.
it took a while, and so I completely echo what you're saying. When something's not healthy, it doesn't matter who it's coming from. Your mental health, your psyche is the most important thing, and so I completely agree. And there were people, and I still call them like, my second brother, my, adopted brothers. Like I have people now that I consider brothers and sisters and family and all of that. And it takes adjusting the way that you think, I think a
Mhm.
lot. But absolutely, I completely agree with what you're saying.
Give me one piece of advice, something, if somebody is in a situation right now, let's say they're in one like you were in, so they're in that religious bogged down, I don't know what to call it, but they're in a religion that is not letting them escape, but they know they're in a relationship or a marriage that is abusive. what is one thing they can do just to try to help themselves get to tomorrow and the next day and the next day?
Start planning internally. Don't write it down. Start planning, start saving, start meeting people outside of that religion and building just small friendships, whatever it may be. If you go to coffee, start talking to people because you need someone that's not in that situation that can help you see things clearly, and make a plan and stick to that plan, because it doesn't get better. And that's, what we know from domestic abuse. It doesn't stop.
Right. It
And
gets
it will
worse. It
always get
gets,
worse. Yeah.
yes, more intense, worse, and that's emotionally, physically,
Yeah.
sexually, all of it, financially, everything. It will
Yes.
just continue to get worse. Absolutely. So plan, but don't write it down,
Yeah.
and start making friends outside of that religion wherever you possibly can.
That's right. If you work, great. And that's another thing. Like, I know a lot of relationships that may not even let you work, but if you do
Mhm.
really use that time to build connection and bonds with people that you're working with for your safety, for your sanity, because you will need some help and some, listening ears and all of that.
I love that. If you have kids and you take them to the park, look at other
Yes.
moms in the park, like just in the grocery store, wherever
Yes.
you go that you're allowed to go alone, look for people that you can bump into and just start a conversation with. I think that's great. Loren,
Yes.
where can people find you? So if they just want to check out what you've got going on because you're super cool, or if maybe they need a PI and they
Yeah.
think you're cool there and they want to hire you, or if they just want to follow you so that they can figure out what's the next case that we're going to start tracking and start writing about and following because we're working on that, where can
Yes.
they find you?
So I am a Common Sense Investigator on YouTube, and I am Lauren Katie on Twitter. Those are the two main things, and you can feel free to DM me. My contact information is on there as well. So
Love it. Loren,
yeah,
you are amazing. I absolutely love you. I'm so grateful that you were willing to spend a little time with me today. And not just for me, but more so for the audience so that they can hear your story and they can know if they are dealing with some type of domestic abuse wrapped up in that religious band of control, that there is a way out of it, and it may take some time, but they can do it too, just like you did. So thank you.
yes, absolutely. Love you too, right back, and it was amazing being on with you.
Thank you.
Yes.